With world-class expertise and local insight, Dexus creates value not just for today, but long into tomorrow.
From Barangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Hello, welcome to the COB on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm Nadine Blaney, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Look, we really benefited from a positive US session through the overnight. Risk appetite getting a little bit of a rejuvenation today. The CBOE Australia Index up by 1.4%. So a rally in energy stocks on the back of strong commodity prices. Also, investors hoping that there is some sort of the prospect for de-escalation of the US-China trade tension, and US President Donald Trump doesn't seem to be hating on the Fed Chair as much as he was, well, at least the day before. So that's setting the scene for the conversations that we will have throughout the next, 20 minutes or so, see how long we go. But yeah, definitely a change in tariff tone coming from some in the U.S. administration. That includes the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. So I was speaking with a number of guests today. Alex Cosley from Russell Investments comes to mind. That interview is up online if you'd like to have a listen. Just saying that, look, take it all with a grain of salt. They do expect to see a slowing in economic growth, but also realize that everybody has a deal to be done. We did see, though, some profit taking happening in the gold miners. Here in Australia in particular, I was just looking at the gold price. It seems to be pushing higher at this very moment. But after those big gains, I don't think it's any big surprise to see some money being taken off the table. I also was speaking about gold with Mark Yoakum from Global X ETFs. That's up online if you'd like to have a listen. Still seeing flows into gold, and talking about a Goldman Sachs price target for gold into mid next year. So you might want to take a listen to that interview for the details. And then technology in the States. So there's a few things that we're talking about here. Clearly, what's happening on the trade and the tariff front. Particularly, we heard from Elon Musk, after the close and the earnings conference call, saying that he's hoping to get an exemption for rare earths coming from China to use in his robots, which I hate thinking about, but anyways, that's just an opinion. But also, we've got earnings going on in the US, and it picks up on Friday in the tech space with Alphabet, and then we'll get a lot of these other tech names reporting next week. So a big focal point will be AI, CapEx spending on AI capabilities, as well as regulation, as well as what's happening on the trade front. So lots to think about as investors right now, as per usual. Here's how the technology names performed here today. So really solid session. WiseTech up by 5.5%, $84.46. Energy, as I mentioned, I spoke with Vandana Hari from Vanda Insights. I think she was in Singapore, talking about the price of oil. She called it irrational exuberance in the market right now. She sees the oil price continuing to head south because we still do have these global demand destruction concerns that are very real. And here's a picture just to bring it down a notch. Big falls there for some of those gold miners. We will be hearing from Newmont as well in the US in quarterlies, so keep that in mind. And Evolution off by 11.5% to $7.90. Very quickly, we did have quarterlies coming from some of the energy plays. Woodside is one of them. Meg O'Neill, the CEO, is saying that they're doing a lot of work as to how trade and tariffs could impact the company, particularly considering it's got that Louisiana asset, which it is still trying to sell down interests in it. The quarterly numbers weren't crash hot, but still good on the previous corresponding period, still higher. Santos yesterday received final regulatory approval for its $5.8 billion Barossa gas project in the Timor Sea. We had Insignia out with an update. Funds under management fell, but still saying that it's looking pretty positive on the takeover front, although it will work obviously in the best interest of shareholders. Telix out with a quarterly up by close to 13%. Capricorn Metals, you don't hear it very often, but its CEO actually stepping aside right now. He's been charged with aggravated assault, goes to court in November. We've got Premier, Accent, Super Retail, La Visa all up. Morningstar says tariffs could be slightly negative, but really immaterial in the long term, saying that Australian shoppers continue to be supported by monetary stimulus, potential disinflation in discretionary products, and are well prepared to tackle any tariff fallout. Satire, not on the list. It was the stock of the day. It did get hit after issuing a trading update. We spoke with David Novak from Wealthwise and Michael Gable from Fairmont Equities.
It's been in a bearish trend. It's coming down to a key support level. There it is. You can see when it got up to $5, that was a previous resistance level back in 2021. And now it's coming down, testing that yellow line at the bottom there around 50 cents. So just based on that weekly trend, I wouldn't touch this at the moment. I mean, it's a very small cap, market capitalization of 200 million as an online retailer. So it's, you're not going to get big institutions buying this. So it's just mostly going to be retail investors.
You know, the problem started well before today. I mean, this is a company that's had a range of, I guess, issues where they've been, battling, concern over how they've, it's not a stock I follow closely, but, how they've calculated sort of shipping costs in the US, and, the founder sold a bunch of shares when it was well over $4, and, their margins have been heading the wrong way for a few years now.
So that was Satire. Welcome to the COB. Mark Gardner from MPC Markets, my guest host. So I would imagine you weren't rushing out to buy Satire.
No, not at all. It was one of those stocks that when it was popular at the highs, we got a lot of inquiries about, and I just gently nudged people away from because it didn't seem to stack up very well. It was very much a story stock. So not a massive fan. I think at that stage we were not really holding a lot of retail anyway. So
no, has that changed though? I mean, I just note that Morningstar analysis talking about still stimulus coming through for Aussie shoppers and potentially interest rates coming down as well.
Yeah, I think there's better opportunities in the market. I mean, we've done quite a bit of buying over the last two or 3 weeks really, and yeah, I think there's still some, like Goodman's was really good value, Macquarie was really good value, WiseTech's been very good value, amongst a bunch of other names. We sort of switched out of some gold into defence ETF last week. Fingers crossed for Newmont tonight. I would imagine they should report very positively. Gold's been very high during this 3-month period, but it was a very big rejection of 3,500 last night, and I was actually watching Trump's address live this morning, and I mean, if he had a tail, he would have put it between his legs, I think, because he basically said, Powell's fine, I'm friends with China, we're going to do deals with everyone, I don't want to answer any questions, thank you, and just walked off. So it's very odd for a man who loves the sound of his own voice, and I think Scott Besson sort of lined that up at the start of the night. We haven't heard much from Navarro recently, so I think he's just very much backpedaling at the moment, and I think the focus now will shift to the deals that he's doing. Apparently 70 odd meetings in 80 days, which is obviously just impossible, but so we've been buying a little bit of Nasdaq and some Asia Tech today, because I think what this has done has really made people realise that just there is things outside the Mag 7, but as you can see here, 2022 bear market had that. They're very comparable in terms of the charts there. This is roughly the same time frame, just slightly, I think about a month difference in the timing, but they do line up very nicely with the table that I brought previously with, a July-August sort of low. And I think what we'll have is US earnings probably buoy the market, as we saw with Tesla this morning. That was a horrible result, but the market is down so far that we saw a 4% aftermarket rally, and it was already up 4%. So I think the earnings are all backward looking. The analysts are going to be very dour given the last month, so we'll have surprises to the upside, I believe, there, which will stabilise things, and we'll probably get a little bit of a rally over the next probably, say, 4 weeks or so. And then I think where the next leg down, if there is a next leg down, will be in deteriorating economic numbers. But we'll just have to wait and see, basically.
But if there's deteriorating economic numbers, and arguably Jerome Powell will be justified to cut rates and therefore putting a little balm on these bruises.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're cutting rates because the economy is weakening, it's not the same. You want to be catching the end of that.
Doesn't hit the same, as the kids would say.
No, it doesn't hit the same. So we're still wary, but I just think at the moment we've seen the worst of it. I think that backpedal last night was a definite concession from what I saw. His body language and mannerisms were just very different. He just wanted to get the hell out of there, and he's pivoting that conversation now to saying, well, you know, we're doing deals with everyone. But I think what he's done by starting this and being so aggressive is that so's everyone else, you know. So that's where we've sort of looked at that Asia tech. I think there's been Baidu's released an AI agent today as well, which is going to compete. Huawei's obviously released those chips that compete with the H100s for NVIDIA in the last week as well. So, but we weren't looking there previously until Trump made us look, because we had to find other alternatives. And I think leaders of many nations will be doing the same. It's not just, you know, we'll just sell into the US, everything will be okay.
So when you think about Chinese tech, are you gaining exposure via the ETF?
Just via the ETF at the moment, yeah. It's a little bit difficult just in terms of getting clients' heads around it, so and individual stocks, etc. So it's just easier to use that ETF. I think there's a new one, Dragon, as well, that's come out, which we've just gone with the Asia Tech Tigers ETF at this stage, which is sort of the Mag 7 equivalent of of the US, basically. I mean, it's, they're very similar characteristics for a lot of those companies, but they're very, very cheap at the moment. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So would you be buying anything in the US now?
Buying a little bit of we bought LNAS, which is the leverage long NASDAQ, mainly just for capital efficiency rather than anything else. But I think over this earnings season, we'll see for the next 2 or 3 weeks, as long as there's no elevated or continuation of the tariff conversation, which I don't think there will be while he has meetings, I think the earnings will drive it higher, and we'll probably review probably 8 to 10% higher or something from there, because I'm a little bit concerned about numbers coming probably late May, early June, like payrolls in June, because we'll see some of the Doge job cuts come through. And obviously we'll probably start to see a little bit of that the tariff inflation come through as well on some of the inflation numbers. So, but we're unlikely to see that probably until late next month. So at the moment, just a sort of cheeky short-term play as it stands, and we'll probably be looking at gold. I mean, gold could potentially pull back quite comfortably to somewhere around 3,000, and that'll be a great place to probably be getting long again. And I think the gold miners, obviously there's profit taking today, but they are still very cheap against the gold price. I think those guys most of them are printing money basically for the next 2 or 3 years, as long as gold stays above 3,000. So, and it looks like it will at this stage. So we'll probably switch back to a bit more risk off towards the middle of the year.
Mm-hmm. And so when you are talking about where you're active in Australia, you sort of highlighted that you sold out of gold, you bought some of those beaten up tech names, WiseTech, Goodman Group. Are you just avoiding the miners right now?
We've already got miners on. It's been a pretty rough trade. There's still a fairly decent chunk, but yeah, I would be adding to them over time. But I think that's probably the risk with those, is that if we do fall into a recessionary environment anywhere in the world, really, they're probably just going to get hit again. I think the short-term opportunities where the bounce is going to be is probably in those tech companies and those growth companies. I think you'll have time in the miners overall, but they're extraordinarily cheap. And I think with China stimulus, etc., once we start to see some momentum to the upside and some trade deals get properly settled, I'd be very happy to be topping up there, for the long term. I mean, copper's bounced back quite miraculously, nearly back to $5 again now. So, whereas the copper miners are still in the doldrums. So, having a similar situation to what happened with gold, where the physical's gone and the miners have lagged, I think you'll have time to watch the physical go in each of the commodities, and then probably pick up the laggards in the mining sector.
Got it. Look, Mark, It's a quiet one out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. Nice to see someone in the city with me. All right, Mark Gardner from MPC Markets there. In fact, Jonathan Tekadina from MPC Markets was in the city as well. I spoke with him a little bit earlier on for the trade. If you'd like to take a listen to that, it is up online. And so let's get to just a look at the leaders. Here we go. It is a story of uranium, as you can see, and also Telix in the wake of its quarterly. Clarity, my instinct was confirmed. I was going to say it's probably not on any news. It's such a volatile stock, and that's true. It's up by 16% to $2.08. I can't see any particular reason why. And of course, DPLO yesterday got really hammered on its quarterly activities report, but just picking itself up today, trading at 94 cents. Some of those on the bottom of the leaderboard there, if you can put it that way, gold miners, no big surprise there. So what's happening tonight? Well, we had, this is a small end of town. Yeah, we've got Eurozone, we've got COB PMIs that are due in the manufacturing, which could still be a little tough. Services sector barely registering a growth pulse. We've got S&P Global PMIs, for the UK. Manufacturing pretty weak there. Bank of England Governor Bailey is due to speak in Washington, D.C. In the US, we get April PMIs as well. We're expecting to see manufacturing sliding into contraction. And also that growth pulse for services is starting to fade. We get the Fed Reserve Beige Book and more Fed speak ahead of the blackout. FOMC's Goolsbee and Hammock are expected to speak. Tomorrow here, we get a couple of quarterly reports. As I mentioned, Newmont comes out through the overnight period, ResMed as well. And we'll be speaking with Mick Farrell. It happens at about 11, but we won't be able to bring it to you until maybe about 11:30. So interesting to talk tariffs, to talk trade, to talk FDA, to talk as well weight loss drugs with Mick as per usual. So let's take a look at where this market ended today. And we've got the CIBO Australia Index up by 1.4%. We have the S&P ASX 200 also making similar gains, 1.3% higher to 7,920. So we've got that 8,000 level, that psychological level in our sights. Gains being made right across the Asian region. US futures still looking really strong at this time, with NASDAQ futures up by about 2%, pretty close to 2%. And we will continue to look at how Tesla, I think, will be interesting, goes in the overnight period. And see if there's anything else coming from the US president. We spoke with a lot of really interesting people, really smart people in markets. If you've missed any of it, you can catch up online, ausbiz.com.au, and we'll see you here tomorrow from 9:45.